Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us continue with Surah An-Nisaa bihawlillahi wa quwwatih. We are on ayah number 127. قال الله تعالى وَيَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ قُلْ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ وَمَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ اللَّاتِي لا تؤتونهن ما كتب لهن وترغبون أن تنكحوهن والمستضعفين من الولدان وأن تقوموا لليتامى بالقسط وما تفعلوا من خير فإن الله كان به عليما. He begins by saying وَيَسْتَفْتُونَكَ. From istafta, yastafti, istifta'an, to seek a fatwa, as in to seek a verdict. And he says that Allah grants you the fatwa concerning women. He says وَمَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ, and what is recited to you in the book, meaning the Quran. That is to say that Allah gives you the fatwa about the ruling of the women in the Quran. And what he's referring to here is ayah number 7, where he says that both men and women have a share in inheritance. Because in the Jahiliyyah, they would deprive the women of inheritance. Women would literally not inherit anything. And Allah Jalla wa Ala abrogated this unjust ruling. He says, Yatam An-Nisaa, the orphans of the women, meaning to say the female orphans. Now, orphans are not women because orphans are below the age of maturity by definition. He says that you do not give them what is written for them or what is ordained for them. Now, there are two ways of interpreting this, and both are correct and not contradictory. The first one says that you do not give them the inheritance that they were due, and this was of course in the days of Jahiliyyah, which Allah abrogated. The second way of interpreting this is, as Aisha radiallahu anha reports, that there would be a man who would be the guardian of an orphan girl. Of course, an orphan being one without a father. Now, this man could marry this orphan girl if he desired her. But if he did marry this orphan girl, because she is of a lowly status and cannot really argue for herself, he would not give her the mahar which she was due. He would give her less than what she is due. And so on this tafsir, this is what the ayah means. لَا تُؤْتُونَهُنَّ مَا كُتِبَ لَهُنَّ. So Allah Jalla wa Ala says, give them their due mahar. Do not cut them short. She also says that if this man did not want to marry her, because he did not desire her, he would not allow others to marry this orphan girl. Now, why would that be? Because the man's money would be joined on with the orphan girl's money. Aisha says, to the extent that he would even share the branch of a date that he has with her. So their wealth would be mixed. Now, if he gave this girl in marriage to someone else, that husband would share in this wealth. And this guardian does not want that husband to be sharing in this wealth, because the guardian's wealth is mixed in with the wealth of the orphan. So he does not want some next man sharing in his wealth. And of course, this is oppression on the orphan girl. Everyone has the right to be married, and that is better for them, of course. So Allah Jalla wa Ala gives the guidance on this matter. So he says in the ayah, you do not give them what is due to them, meaning of the proper mahar. وَتَرْغَبُونَ from رَغِبَ يَرْغَبُ فِي شَيْءٍ, to desire. You desire to تَنْكِحُوهُنَّ, nikah, to marry them. And he says, وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ, that Allah gives you a ruling regarding the mustad'afin, those who are weak and oppressed, from the wildan, from the children, because the children would be deprived of their inheritance as well in the days of Jahiliyyah. So in the ayat of the inheritance, right at the beginning of this surah, even from ayah number 7, Allah Jalla wa Ala gives even children their due right of the inheritance. He says, وَأَن تَقُومُوا لِلْيَتَامَى بِالْقِسْطِ, and that you stand بالقسط, with justice, لليتامى, for the orphans. So the idea is to be just with the orphans who are under your care. And then he ends by saying, whatever of good you do, then Allah was ever knowing of it. Notice kana, meaning was. It is for emphasis, like we've said many times before. Allah was always knowing of whatever good you do. So the idea behind saying this is that He will reward you for whatever little good that you do, or large, it does not matter. One might ask, but if that's the case, then why does Allah simply not say that whatever good you do, Allah will reward you for it? And the answer is that if Allah Jalla wa Ala tells us that He is most knowledgeable about all things, then He is giving us some information about His own self and His characteristics. And it is impossible to fear Allah without knowing Him. And it is impossible to know Allah except with His characteristics. So the characteristic of knowledge implies that He rewards, but it also implies that just as He knows your good deeds, He also knows your evil deeds, which also further implies that He is able to punish you for your evil deeds. So in making mention of His knowledge rather than making mention of the fact that He will reward you, it's actually giving you more knowledge and more points of reflection. Okay, so reflecting on this ayah, we take the virtue of the Sahaba in that they are asking the Prophet about a fatwa concerning the women because the Sahaba do not want to fall into the haram. And the only way not to fall into the haram is to seek knowledge, and that is done by asking those who know. We also find the immense justice and virtuous divine nature of Allah Jalla wa Ala in that He emphasizes the rights of those who are oppressed and those who are downtrodden and those types of people who are vulnerable and taken advantage of, such as orphan girls and other children. Once we learn of the background of this ayah, we also then can appreciate the virtuous nature of this deen as contrasted with the people of Jahiliyyah and how rough and merciless they were with the vulnerable groups, such as orphans. And also we learn of the importance of not taking liberties with anybody, especially the vulnerable group, with regards to giving them their inheritance and also giving the orphan girls their due right from the mahar and not shortchanging them. We find that the guardian of the orphan girl is allowed to marry her if he is eligible. For example, if the orphan girl is a cousin of his, so the son of his uncle, in that case he will be the wali and he will be the husband. So he will give the orphan girl in marriage to himself. Of course, this marriage needs to be witnessed, as is the condition of marriage, but it is allowed, that is the point. And so from this ayah we may also take that people who are below the age of maturity can enter into a marriage contract, in that it is not haram. And as for the minimum age of marriage, this is determined by customs and cultures of the people. The Quran does not stipulate a lower limit on the age of marriage. Rather, it leaves it down to the customs. Further evidence is the ayah of Surah At-Talaq, where Allah says, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, and those who do not menstruate, talking about the girls below the age of maturity. Likewise, the Prophet marrying Aisha radiallahu anha when she was just 6 years old, and this is not specific to the Prophet, rather this is a permissibility for anyone. But we say that it all depends on the customs. You need to do that which is deemed right and proper in the customs of the people where you are living. And we also take that Allah is all-knowing about every little thing that we do, and He will reward us for all good that we produce in this life. And we also take the name of Allah that He is Alim along with its attributes. Ayah number 128. وَإِنْ إِمْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا أَوْ إِعْرَاضًا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عليهما أن يصلحا بينهما صلحا والصلح خير وأحضرت الأنفس الشح وإن تحسنوا وتتقوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. Firstly, what is unusual about this ayah is that it is a condition which begins with a noun. Normally conditions begin with a verb. But here, imra'atun and khafat have swapped positions. You would expect وَإِنْ خَافَتْ إِمْرَأَةٌ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا. And this is permissible for the verb and the active participle to swap positions. So if a woman fears from her ba'al, now a ba'al means a master or someone who has authority over another person. Here it refers to the husband because the husband has authority over the wife. Nushuzan here means that he remains aloof from her, so away from her. And as for i'radan, it means he does not speak to her nor socialize with her. So with the nushuz, he may speak to her but not in a loving way. As for i'rad, he would not speak to her full stop. So if the woman fears that her husband is going to treat her in this way, the ayah says that there is no sin upon them, that they should make a reconciliation between themselves. Sulhan is mansub bil-fatha, it is a maf'ul al-mutlaq to emphasize the verb. So this would be coming to some form of agreement that makes them both happy and content. He says, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ, and making reconciliation is better. Okay, better than what? Better than divorce and separating and parting ways. And he says that the souls, meaning the human souls, are swayed by shuh, meaning greed. So they are given to greed. It is a natural characteristic of the human soul to want to have your cake and eat it. So you want everything to go your way. But of course in reality this will never be the case. There's always going to be give and take if ever you truly hope for reconciliation. And so Allah Jalla wa Ala goes on to say, but if you tuhsinu, make ihsan, do good. That is to say, do good to your wife and not turn away from her and treat her badly. وَتَتَّقُوا, and have taqwa. In all matters of course, but especially in the context of this ayah regarding how you treat your wife. Always asking yourself, is the way that I'm treating my wife pleasing to Allah Jalla wa Ala or not? Just take a note here. He says, أُحْضِرَتَ الْأَنفُسُ الشُّحْ, the souls have been given a shuh, avarice or greed, despite the fact that it is Allah who has put greed in the souls of humans. But he does not state that explicitly because he does not link evil things to himself. Also, when he mentions ihsan and taqwa in close succession, we may say that ihsan is proactively doing good and the taqwa would be refraining from evil. And then he finishes off by saying that Allah was ever aware of what you are doing. So khabir means the one who knows the secret matters as well as outward matters. And the alim would be the one who knows all outward matters. Also note that the word ash-shuh is mansub bil-fatha because it is a maf'ul thanin, a second passive participle. The souls have been granted greed. So both the souls and the greed are passive participles on the receiving end of the verb, to be given or to be granted. So reflecting on this ayah, we find that Allah Jalla wa Ala wants to keep the husband and wife together if there is a marital discord, and that keeping together is better than separating. Separating is allowed if there is a reason for that, but keeping together is better, and that you should always try to save the marriage rather than dissolve it. We may also take that you can act upon certain indications, because here the ayah says that if a woman fears that her husband will turn away and not treat her in a loving fashion, so she does not know that for sure, but because of some circumstantial evidence she fears it. So you can act upon these qara'in or these indications that you have. We notice that this ayah encourages a sulh, reconciliation, and making peace between two parties. But it does not give us the detail of how to do it. And that is because it leaves the detail down to the people. Because the details can change from time to time, place to place, and so every case needs to be looked at on its own merits. So an example of a sulh we know from the sunnah that the Prophet wanted to leave Sauda radiallahu anha. And so what she did was that she gave her night to Aisha, so that the Prophet stays with Aisha where he would ordinarily be staying with Sauda. and in return the Prophet keeps her as his wife. So this is a sulh. Then you ask, but what is the advantage for Sauda in this? The advantage for her is that she remains as one of the Mu'mineen, and that she will be the wife of the Prophet in Jannah. Okay, what if a woman says that you can give my night to the other co-wife, but in return you have to give me a payment? This is permissible because it is part of sulh. Remember, there are no details given about sulh. So any type of sulh is permissible unless it involves something which is haram. We also learn from this ayah that Allah is telling us that making sulh or reconciliation is not going to be an easy process. Why is this? Because your ego is going to be a hurdle. You would want the matter to go all your way, and you would not want to give up any rights. So you don't want to give and take, you just want to take and take. So when Allah Jalla wa Ala tells us of the reality of your own self, it helps you to prepare to fight against your own self, because you cannot fight that which you do not know. So if you know that your own self is going to be covetous and greedy and avaricious, then you can prepare yourself to fight your own greed and avarice. We also learn from this ayah the virtue of ihsan and taqwa, and we explained what these two mean and the differences between them. And also we learn that Allah is al-Khabir, the one who knows the inner secrets. And of course, He will requite you for your actions. Ayah 129, وَلَن تَسْتَطِيعُوا أَن تَعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ النِّسَاءِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتُمْ فَلَا تَمِيلُوا كُلَّ الْمَيْلِ فَتَذَرُوهَا كَالْمُعَلَّقَةِ وَإِن تُصْلِحُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. He says you will not be able to ta'dilu, be just, بَيْنَ النِّسَاء, between the women, meaning between your wives. وَلَوْ حَرَصْتُمْ, even if you have hirs, حَرَصَ يَحْرِسُ حِرْسًا, to be eager, or even if you ardently desire it, you can never be totally just between your wives. So this refers to your love. You will not be able to equally love the wives, and you're not taken into account for that. But you have to be just in other physical matters, such as expenditure and how much time you spend with each other. It needs to be equally divided. Even if you give gifts, you have to give other wives equal gifts. So Allah is telling us, do not incline to one wife over the other wives, so as to leave the other كَالْمُعَلَّقَةِ, like something hanging. So this would be in a state of limbo. You treat her as if she does not have a husband, and yet at the same time she is not divorced, like a case of limbo. So reflecting on this ayah, we find that just like in the last ayah, Allah tells us something about our own nature, that we will never be able to love two people equally, and that this is just part of our nature and we're not taken into account for it. However, we need to control what we are able to control, and this will be things like expenditure and how much time we stay with the wives and so on. Of course, this ayah would therefore imply that more than one wife is permissible, but it also tells us how difficult it will be to juggle between these wives in equality. We find in this ayah the forbiddance of showing favoritism to any one wife, and this is of course outwardly speaking. We also take from this that sulh and taqwa are a cause for Allah Jalla wa Ala being forgiving and merciful to you, as this is how He ends the ayah. As for the difference of sulh and taqwa in this context, the sulh means to make something right or make something salih. So if you have treated one wife unjustly and have been unequal, then sulh means that you rectify your actions. You make it righteous after it was unrighteous. And taqwa means you prevent yourself or save yourself from treating one wife unjustly, because taqwa has this idea of protecting yourself. And also we learn of the two names of Allah, Ghafoor and Rahim, along with their descriptions fitting to the divine nature of Allah Jalla wa Ala. هذا والله أعلم.